So I welcome now someone that everybody knows and is getting to know even better. I welcome Stefan Forbree as the Managing Director of Tafe New South Wales to talk about the exciting work that they've been doing in Western Sydney. Thank you very much, Stefan.
Thank you, Jenny. Can I just do a quick sound check that you can hear me? Can you just give me a thumbs up? Yeah, thanks very much. And hello, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted with this opportunity to come and talk a bit about the future. I'll talk a bit about training and education and what we do here in Tafe, New South Wales. But firstly, can I acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the many beautiful lands that we join from today, and pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging, and as well as extending that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us here today. I'd like to also welcome my counterparts from the other TAFEs across the country and the heads of the newly established skills organisations, and of course everyone else who's joining us here today. All TAFEs have a proud history of delivering training and adapting to the changing needs of our community, changing needs of industry, and certainly and indeed changing needs of students. And right now we're seeing trends that are transforming the world of work at an unprecedented pace. We're seeing labour market disruptions caused by things like virtual communication, robotic process automation, and artificial intelligence, just to throw some of those concepts into this mix. And for example, the manufacturing industry finds itself in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. Unlike the previous industrial revolutions, this one's likely to create more job types and more jobs than it destroys. But the skills required for future jobs in manufacturing are absolutely shifting. I listened with keen interest to the perspectives on job outlooks and other trends that George McGalogan has provided just a few moments ago. And it was indeed a very inspirational insight, not just for the part of Australia that I work in, namely New South Wales, but indeed also hearing what happens across the whole nation. So very, very inspirational. So as an example, what this means is that employees that are working in advanced manufacturing need to rely more on digital and soft skills. Programmed machinery is now being used to complete tasks that were previously performed by human beings. This has created a need for fabrication and systems engineers who can build, who can service, and who can program all this equipment. And smart factories are now digitized and connected with machinery and equipment that is designed to follow automated processes. It has created a need for systems and machine operators who can manage and troubleshoot automated processes. And I could go on with all these examples, but I'm sure you can see and you'd agree the changing nature of work means that the type of training and the way we deliver this needs to evolve. And that's exactly what I was going to talk about here as a given example of what we do at Tafe New South Wales to address this. And I look very much forward to hearing also over the course of the day other speakers at this roundtable talk about this in detail, and certainly with insights that far exceeds mine. Today, I'd like to tell you about one of the things that we are doing here at Tafe New South Wales to rise to this challenge, and also, frankly, to take advantage of this opportunity that suddenly or gradually is presenting itself. Why are we introducing a new tertiary educational model right now, and how does it work is really the question. Well, let me start by talking about the boundaries, and what I mean by this is the boundaries between work and learning are definitely blurring at the minute, and the same goes for the distinction between higher education and vocational education. Students studying VET are using their success to get into university, and students who are studying higher education are choosing to study vocationally because of the practical skills they can gain. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. We had a student from Tamworth here in New South Wales who studied several courses with Tafe New South Wales over a number of years. That included a Certificate 2 in Animal Studies, a Certificate 4 in Veterinary Nursing, and a Diploma in Veterinary Nursing Surgical. He then went on to complete a Master of Science in Veterinary Anesthesia and Analgesia with the University of Edinburgh in Europe. And he now currently works as a veterinary technician specialist at the University of Sydney. So this young man has been around a fair bit, but these increasing multi-directional pathways see the movement of students, such as this young man, between school and one or more courses in higher and vocational education, and often while they're in the workplace. So imagine if this young man from Tamworth had been able to study all of these qualifications concurrently through one education and training facility. To achieve this, we need to work with education and industry partners to respond to these trends and desires and demands and create an environment that makes this possible. And here in New South Wales, that's why we're trialing the new ways of providing tertiary education in a cohesive way, in an integrated way. Partnering with industry and universities is absolutely not a new thing for TAFE New South Wales, and I'm sure it's not a new thing for any of the other TAFEs in Australia. We've done this for several decades, but what we're doing through this new merged model takes collaboration between TAFE New South Wales universities and industry to the next level. We're calling these collaboration centres Institutes of Applied Technology, IATs, and we're trialling 3 now. Digital Tech out of the TAFE New South Wales Meadowbank facility, construction out of Kingswood, and a 3rd regionally based institute that has yet to be announced. So in other words, 1 in metropolitan Sydney, 1 in Western Sydney, and 1 in the bush. These industry areas have been chosen because as a whole, they're already experiencing disruption, and the nature of their work is indeed rapidly changing. According to Deloitte Australia, we will need 156,000 more digital technology workers by 2025, so in 3 years' time. And this represents 1/4 of all jobs created between now and then. We're increasingly seeing digital technology skills gaps widening as the fast pace of technological change continues to affect the skill needs of the workforce. Skilling, upskilling, and reskilling, and in-demand and emerging digital technology skills areas will be absolutely vital. And this applies not only to roles directly aligned to digital technology, but also to jobs across all sectors, like we just heard George talk about: health, aged care, disability, but also primary industries, and of course sectors such as transport and logistics. So digital tools and new technologies are reshaping roles and the future of work everywhere. So let's take construction as an example. The massive investment in infrastructure projects, civil construction work, and residential developments have led to an acute skills shortage. So the construction sector is undergoing a technological transformation to address this very point. The IAT, the Institute of Applied Technology for Construction, is designed to meet this challenge quickly by providing a pipeline of highly skilled construction workers. It'll help business reskill and upskill workers with the advanced construction, the competencies needed for emerging job roles in construction. And each institute will aim to meet the needs of industry in a way that is effective and efficient now. So not in 2 years' time, not in 3 years' time, when the industry already has moved on. And certainly the engagement that I have and that we have with industry here in New South Wales tell us that they already have capable workers. So they don't want to start from scratch. They don't always want to have the time, or they do not always have the time to spend the 6 and 12 months courses and so on, like something like this, to pick up a specific skills. So we're looking at short course options. We're looking at micro-creds, micro-credentials, and micro skills that would help them meet a specific need very quickly. Closely aligning these skill sets-based courses to the specific needs of industry will, of course, be critical to the success of these IATs. So these courses are needed to complement rather than replace the existing set of nationally recognized courses that TAFE New South Wales universities and industries are currently offering. So we're not looking to replace anything. We're looking to add what we're already doing. This form of collaboration will ensure that we can adapt much more quickly to the constantly changing needs of industry. It'll ensure that we are creating job-ready graduates with the right skills for immediate and future industry skills needs. So that's essentially why we're doing it. So let me tell you a little bit about how it works and how it looks when we put it into action. There are 4 areas in which we're looking to collaborate with universities and industry. The first one is co-innovation. So to co-innovate by adopting cutting-edge delivery methods, gaining access to industry transforming technologies, and using the research and the insights from our partners to inform our curriculum. So for the IAT for digital tech, this could be working, for instance, with a company like Google, for sake of an example, to better understand the trends in the tech sector. It would in turn help us identify courses that will increase the number of early adopters for a particular technology. Secondly, we'll co-design courses with predetermined pathways that support work integrated learning. We're already doing this with several industries. For example, we're currently co-designing a micro-skills course with Volvo Bus Australia that'll help mechanics who are used to working on diesel buses upskill and work safely with new electric bus technology as the industry transitions. And for instance, here in New South Wales, our transport agency, which is called Transport for New South Wales, have already declared that they'll transition its 8,000 plus bus fleet by 2030. And the first ones of these buses are already in commercial operation and roaming around the streets of Sydney as we speak. So the need for that transformation of the training of the people who maintain and operate these buses is absolutely imminent. Third example, we're exploring options to co-delivery through masterclasses, through academy programs, and establishing internships and traineeships with our industry partners. For example, inviting a building designer from a major industry project to talk about how they'll build their career in the construction sector and the pathways that become available. And finally, we're considering how we can share spaces and fit out facilities with advanced technology provided by our partners through co-location. An example of this, rather than establishing a new cyber academy, we would consider what's already on offer through one of our partners. Or rather than building a construction work site specifically for learning purposes, we'd look at what our partners have on offer and deliver on site at the workplace. We are, for instance, here as we are building the Meadowbank facility, the partners that we have in construction there invite students from our courses and classes on site and actually for sort of a real-time experience in observing and watching and learning what that physical environment looks like in a real construction environment as opposed to one which is a dedicated training one. So some considerations for the models. It's the New South Wales government's vision, and we're making solid progress actually towards this, but we're still working through how we'll exactly make this operational. Each institute will be different. And although we're working with our partners already, it's still early days. We're exploring how we will make decisions, how we'll manage the enrollments, engage the industry more broadly, work in with the universities and all these different parameters that they require, including with their academic boards and funding solutions, etc., and how we'll operate all this or make all this possible in the future. It's not without its complexities, but we'll definitely get it done. And we'll need to determine the mix of education deliverables. So higher education, vocational education and training, industry-led education, and also the future-focused education models with new curricula. We're going to focus on in-demand and emerging occupations, and it'll include careers aligned to things such as digital literacy and foundational skills, devices and software implementation, information and data analytics, digital content, software and product creation, cloud computing, digital security and ethics, and also digital project management. And as I mentioned earlier, we also know that many occupations are changing because of the Industry 4.0. And that's why we're exploring how we can create credentials also for working with cyber-physical systems, using additive manufacturing and design, operating smart factories, and using the smart construction technology such as building information modeling and the virtual design and construction. So a lot of really, really exciting stuff that happens here, and something that I, on the one hand, acknowledge is a pretty big task, but also at the same time profoundly exciting to be part of. So when we talk about the benefits of this, I know I started by saying that we're meeting these demands for industry, but at the end of the day, it's our students who will benefit from this model the most. They'll have access to enhanced training and products that are only available through these IATs. They'll learn from a varied range of industry experts. They'll receive training that has been co-designed and co-delivered with both industry and university partners. And when they graduate, they'll graduate with both a practical and an academic skill set that are directly relevant to the careers that they've chosen. I think there'll be some key lessons we'll learn along the way for sure, and it'll help training providers become much more agile than what we perhaps have been in the past. And working with the broader Tafe New South Wales network will be, of course, making sure that what we do at the IATs connect in with the rest of this network. And for those who don't know, we've got quite an extensive network of about 136 or so campuses across the state, and a few more being built as we speak. So the whole state will benefit from this collaboration model. Students will be able to access the Institute's training and industry expertise, even though they don't physically visit these places. It'll act as a feeder. So that means, for instance, a student studying a statement of attainment in cybersecurity at Kingscliff, for instance, in the north, can progress his or her studies at the Digital Tech IAT at Meadowbank. Or if you're an apprenticeship plumber studying in Orange, you can go on to study an undergraduate degree at the construction IAT at Kingswood, just to give examples. And these examples are obvious reasons why New South Wales, they're obviously New South Wales centric, but there's absolutely no doubt that the models that we established through the IATs could be replicated across Australia. And I really welcome any thoughts that any one of you might have, any feedback that any one of you might have as to the model that I've shared today. And I also welcome an ongoing and continued discussion with any of the organizations present here about the way this could perhaps apply in your jurisdiction. So thanks for listening, and back to you, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I don't believe there are any questions in the chat for you, but we do have a question from Mary, and I haven't seen any other electronic hands up. So Mary, over to you.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks, Stefan. I think it's a really exciting model, and I look forward to talking to you further about it. My question is in relation to the governance, and I don't know whether you've worked this out yet, and or whether or not you're setting up separate entities for each of the IATs.
Yeah, the model is definitely designed or intended to be setting up separate entities. So that's what's in the Shergol-Gonski report, and that's the desire or the intent behind this. What exactly that's going to look like, we don't know yet. So what we've decided to do is to run these 3 pilots that I talked about, and we do this on the back of funding and facilities that Tafe operates. But we will, of course, go as close to the model as we can, but acknowledging it's a pilot setup, and therefore it might not be taking the model to its absolute full potential or extent. But there is a desire to set up independent, separate models. What was the first part of your question? I think there were 2 parts in it.
Well, I was sort of interested in the governance then arrangement.
Oh, yeah.
So if they're separate entities, do they then have a separate sort of governance model, or do they still come under the
okay,
yeah.
So what we're treating each of them separately, and that means that each of the IATs will have its own governing model, because they're slightly different in nature. They're slightly different in the number of universities that we partner with. Some of them it's with one university, but there's also some that are with more than one. Some of them it's with more than one industry partner. So it's a little bit different from case to case. But it rolls up into, I think, a governance model that also Department of Education here in New South Wales has some insight into, so that we learn from the practices and the experience that we gain every time we build a new one of these, and it rolls up into what hopefully will inform a model that would have some level of consistency going forward. But I think it's important to acknowledge that these sectors and they're all sector specific, so construction, technology, aged care, etc. Each of these sectors has its specialties to them. So it's important, at least for me, to not try and tie everything and everyone with the same brush, but bring on board the areas where there are synergies and similarities, but at the same time allow for some sort of tailor making for each of these individual institutions. And try to minimize the governance, by the way, so that we can have that environment where things can flourish and build and grow without being totally overburdened by the combination of sort of TAFE governance coupled with university governance, coupled with industry governance. So if we get it right, it'll be a catalyst. It'll drive some synergies and some speed and pace, and certainly some inspiration. But if we get it wrong, it just becomes a burden of administration. We absolutely do not want that.
Stefan, I can't see any other questions unless Ron's going to say there are any. Can I just want to ask you one quick question. How have you gone getting industry at the table? Have they been there and actively involved? Because I think one of the things that today is all about is the dialogue around between industry and TAFEs, and we do it all the time. But how's it gone under this new model?
It's been overwhelming, frankly. What we did was when we launched, so we've launched each of them separately because we talk and we direct our attention towards a certain sector. So let's take, for instance, the technology one as an example of that. So we had an industry day where it was all during COVID, so we did it all virtually from our own TV, film and media studios out of St. Leonard's, one of our campuses. And we hosted a fully blown industry launch. Students behind the cameras, of course, students running the mix and the makeup and everything else, so that we could showcase TAFE from the part of that we are also incredibly proud of, I'm sure, across all TAFEs, namely to see that applied practical training that we do be brought to life, a showcase right in front of the nose of the industries. We had more than 100 companies attending. So these were the tech companies, the ones that you would expect, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Microsoft, the IBMs, and all these other companies attending. And the invitation for all of them was to submit an expression of interest, which many of them did. And from that, we selected the number of sort of prospects or propositions that we thought were the most promising ones, which has then since then led into specific negotiations and a selection of the industry partners. We had a lot to choose from, and we had a lot to also gain inspiration from. And of course, we couldn't go with all of them, but even the ones we didn't go with would have left an opportunity and a door open for other sorts of partnerships with us. So I think I'll really sort of distill it down to saying there was no shortage of interest from industry, and the same is the case for the other sectors that we are exploring now. I should also say that in addition to the IATs, the Institutes of Applied Technology, we run sort of a smaller version of this, which we call Centers of Excellence, which are perhaps less ambitious when it comes to a merged, blended model between universities and TAFE, but still with that strong, very, very strong desire to partner, both with industries and with universities. And we're seeing the same happen there, with companies coming to the table with a really, really keen interest to take part in this. I think they've realized some of the things that George talked about in his presentation up front about the importance of partnership and collaboration. And we certainly see that in the response and interest that we have.
Stefan, thank you very much. Thank you for a really stimulating presentation. There might be some time for a few further questions at the end of our 4 presenters. We're going to now turn to Tadashi Ganasan, who a lot of you will know as being a big architect in terms of industry engagement in the West.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jenny. And I too want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. It's been really great to hear the previous speakers I've learned a lot from both Tafe New South Wales and the comments that George had made previously about the regional resonated. So when Craig and TDA first approached me to share my insights into industry engagement in the regions and see whether there are any differences between engaging and doing business as a TAFE in the region to the metro, I had to really think hard whether there was a difference. And on reflection, I've landed on, yes, there is actually a fundamental difference between how a regional TAFE does business to a metro TAFE. And I guess these are my initial observations. And I say initial because I've been in the job for about 5 minutes. I was appointed as Managing Director to South Regional TAFE in January of this year. So these are just my initial observations. And a lot of what I'm going to say won't come as a revelation to many of you. So I guess my initial observations are that industry engagement and doing business in the regions is much more organic and relational and less transactional. So some of this comes out of a necessity, I suppose, and the need to operate in certain ways in bigger cities and bigger colleges, as opposed to regional centres and colleges. So, and that is why I landed on the title of my presentation, which I'm going to try and share with you right now. So let's hope this works. Is that working?
No, it's not. Just hit bottom share screen.
Just give me a tick. Okay, let's go share screen. Let's go there.
Yeah, coming through now. Excellent. Excellent.
Okay. I'll just start it there. Okay, so that's the title, Mobilizing Social Capital to Support Industry Needs. And I guess just to sort of define what I mean by social capital, it is really, I've taken the OEC definition as networks together with shared norms, values and understandings that facilitate cooperation within or among groups. So really, I just see that mobilization of social capital really at the forefront of any industry engagement that appears to be done in a regional TAFE. So that's sort of to clarify what I'm going to be talking about. And when I meant by transactional relationships are built as opposed to transactional relationships as opposed to relational, transactional relationships are really built on expectations for reciprocation. So, for example, some of the key differences between transactional and relational would be, say, professional versus friendly, self-interest versus mutual interest, what you get versus what you give, stay in touch versus keep informed, and judge the results versus evaluate the relationship. And I guess what starts out as transactional becomes relational. So in the metro, where it's larger and more populated, my experience and observations is that it takes longer to establish good partnerships. It can work the other way too, where particularly in the regional, where if something does go wrong, the reputational damage seems to stay around much longer and can be deeper. Some other observations I've noted is that the good of the community and the broader interest plays a much higher part in the decision-making process in the regional college. And small wins are big wins for a regional college such as South Regional. We do get out of bed for $100 when our metro counterparts may not. So, okay, so a little bit about South Regional just before I do go on. I guess I do want to say that the TAFE network in WA has an abundance of social capital at various levels of the TAFE college. So this amount of formal and informal networks, there's there's a significant amount of formal and informal networks between the 5 colleges. We do a lot of sharing of ideas and best practices with at times the larger metro colleges, North Metro and South Metro colleges taking the lead and supporting the smaller regional ones. And this has been absolutely invaluable and is a really good example of social capital working. So South Regional TAFE, we've got campuses from Bunbury down to Albany, across to Esperance and inland to Narrogin. It's about 196 square kilometres, 1,000 square kilometres of coverage there. And, you know, it is the college and the delivery is growing with growth in aged and healthcare, transport, logistics, construction and primary industries. And there are some new and emerging industries as well in the southwest. We certainly can feel the movement of population coming down southwest from the city as well. So that's a bit about us. So I'm going to present an example of how South Regional has built up a bank of social capital and how that had assisted us and the local regional communities to meet a challenge. And I've just put up on screen what the challenge was. Really, the situation was there weren't any seasonal, there was a seasonal demand for harvest workers, but there weren't any workers with the borders closed. And this commenced at the beginning of COVID. And farmers typically take a significant amount of workers during harvest time, and they do require lead time to get them ready to safely operate in a harvest environment. So I won't read it out, but that is really the crux of the challenge. And it was fair to say that the lack of workers in the region for harvesting put a significant amount of strain and stress on the farming families as well. So the response, I guess community businesses, individuals and TAFE worked hand in hand to skill workers to hit the ground running and ready for the annual harvest. So at the beginning of COVID, the McGowan government announced a $25 million recovery skill set package. And really that was developed as a direct response to COVID. There were skill sets and half price skill sets. So we used one of those skill sets to create the harvesting course. And really the aim was speed to market of workers. Needed to get workers really trained and safe to be able to work in the harvesting area. So the content was developed, but then we didn't have any equipment to train the graduates, and the purchase of harvesting equipment is significant. It's very expensive, and the procurement time can be long. So you know that and training work-ready graduates really required us to have the harvesting to have significant investment in harvesting equipment. So what happened then was about over $1.5 million worth of new harvest equipment was loaned to the college to train. And how that happened was that a local farmer purchased the equipment from a dealership and was happy for the students to be trained on these before he took delivery. So brand spanking new equipment, students play with it and learn. I guess the reason that came about is because the dealer played football with the lecturer. So the role of sport and community events is so important to a regional college such as us. Then we had the challenge of a classroom. We didn't have the space to be able to train and keep all of this equipment and train all our students. So a trucking company provided its paddock, agricultural training sites lent their sites, and a school farmland lent us their site as well. So that was a tick there. And then the farmers, local farmers, donated a whole lot of grain for practical training. So the resources were taken care of as well. And I guess the outcome was that, you know, we've trained now up to 50 graduates. All of them had secured jobs for the last harvest. And in addition to that, our hospitality students provided meals for everyone in industry and all the players along this training journey, which was about a bit over 2.5 to 3 weeks for each course. The farmers got their workforce, and the harvesting happened. The community was really happy. And I've just put up there in the screen some of the public media statements and what they look like, which was really, it's telling. Sorry, I'll just go back there. So I guess the principle, I mean, there's lots of principles for success here, and I've listed a few on the slide there. But one thing that was really an attractive proposition for us, and why we would do this again, is that in addition to all the other benefits, the diversification of risk is an extremely attractive proposition for a regional TAFE such as us. So my second example is around what we call a gather and feast. It's so the previous example was about how social capital enabled us to meet an industry, community, and workforce need. This second example is more around how we go about building some of that social capital as a college. So the Gather and Feast is a training restaurant at our Margaret River campus for students in learning hospitality and commercial cookery. So as the regular farmers market are on our college premises, young chefs basically learn about seasonal and sustainable local produce. By having those local producers and farmers available and approachable on locations. So students go and source, or what we call gather, produce from the farmers and take it back to the kitchen to prepare a 5-course degustation menu. It's really a farm to fork dining experience where students are in charge of the process, from creating the budget to plating up. And diners get to sample the degustation menu made from the produce that was in the stalls of the farmers market just hours earlier. This face-to-face contact creates strong connection to the product and respect for the farmer, the work that the farmer has put in. So that's the concept of Gather and Feast. It is in Margaret River, which is sort of a bit of a foodie hub for those that know. So the restaurant also is set up, and that's a picture of the restaurant in the bottom right-hand corner, with an open kitchen so that the diners can feel part of the cooking experience. It's again allowing for that connection between community diners and our students. And the intergenerational events that the students hold for the senior citizens also works really well to build that connection with members of our community who may be lonely and isolated at times. So we see all of these activities as helping build that bank of social capital. So in wanting to also, however, support the aspirational goals of our students, we use our prolific local talent in Margaret River, including chefs, producers and suppliers, to get them to visit the training restaurant kitchen to teach our students about the use of the local produce. So the spotlight more than ever is on provenance, and the students are able to access the local knowledge, which is invaluable. And they also learn to create some exquisite dishes and make wine using grapes grown on site, which gets served at the restaurant. So although they're being taught to act locally, the students' access to the world-class local talent taps into their global or broader aspirations. And that's just I'm just put up some sort of some of the pictures around that teaching there. So I've just on the screen got there some of the reflections from our clients that have attended those intergenerational events, and comments such as, really enjoyed socializing with the different generations. With no elders in our lives, it means a lot to have the opportunity to make new connections, are really priceless comments. So I guess ultimately the concept behind Gather and Feast is really about providing our students and with the community connections and access to the local talent and knowledge, pretty much to invariably bring food culture deeper into the students from our regions. But by enabling these connections, the college also benefits from further building its own bank of social capital, which we feel benefits our students immeasurably. So another thread in all of this is that the building of that social capital brings emotions, and I mean that in a positive way. into the fundamental business of training, skilling and workforce development and industry engagement, which for South Regional TAFE in these current times, we feel is the right approach to it all. So yeah, look, these are just some of my observations that I thought I'd share with you today. I can't take a lot of credit for a lot of this because most of this had kick-started well before I started at the college, but I thought I should share this with you.
Thank you very much, Darshi. I haven't seen any questions in the chat, and I'm just going to flick across. I haven't seen any questions come from a hand up. As someone who's spent the last few years in Tasmania, I really liked the way you've categorized that, and your first example, it was a really big issue as well, I believe, across the country, but it was certainly a huge issue in Tasmania when we couldn't get skilled workers for the fruit picking industry, and that collaboration with industry was critical during COVID to find solutions. So some great examples there, and some really interesting piece around the organic and relationship of being in a region. Any last minute questions from anyone for Darshi? We will probably have 5 minutes at the end. Again, thank you very much, Darshi. We're now going to turn to Bill Mundy. Bill is the Manager TAFE Sales, Marketing and Engagement for Federation University, and Bill's going to pivot us into talking about renewable energy. Thank you very much, Bill.
And thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can. Yep.
Yeah, that's
getting
brilliant.
nods. Yeah, excellent. Just had to close some things in the background. Thank you everybody for the opportunity. Thank you, Jenny, for the introduction, etc., to present to you today the APRITEC initiative. And like everybody else, I'd just like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, and thank them for the opportunity to enjoy the wonderful country that I'm. So today I'm building a little bit, if you like, on the discussion that Darshi's just had with us in terms of industry engagement. What I'd like to talk to you about today is a project that Federation University and particularly the TAFE part of our business has been working on for a number of years, which is the Asia Pacific Renewable Energy Training Centre, or APRITEC as we like to call it. And we've been at this particular project with our industry partners in regional Victoria for the past 5 or so years and developing it up. And when we started developing this particular project, we did so with the support of our partners. And I think the important part here in terms of acknowledging our partners, Vestas, Tilt and GPG that you can see on the screen there, those partners have been an integral to the establishment of APRITEC right from the word go back in 2016, providing support in terms of advice, consultancy, etc., and then ultimately supporting us back in 2019, cumulatively with $1.8 million worth of funding direct from industry. This particular project that we're working on has not received any funding from the state government of any significance whatsoever. So it's an entirely funded industry project that we're looking to develop. And why are we doing this? Essentially, we're doing this because we recognised back in 2016 that there's an emerging industry in our region, which was the move to the generation of renewable energy. Particularly through wind generation in our sector, or in our region, I should say. So Southwest Victoria is one of the windiest corridors in Australia and happens to enjoy sustained wind all the time. In fact, as I look out the window of my home at the moment, it's continuing to blow hard, which means it's good for the wind farms in our region. So with that growth in the industry and obviously the move towards the replacement of current fossil fuels, we saw the opportunity to provide support to the wind energy generation sector. And once we started to work in collaboration with our partners, we started to realise that there's effectively 3 distinct areas that they needed support in the development of their workforce. And up until that time, up until pre-COVID, effectively the workforce that was supporting the wind energy sector was imported. We did some work to scope out that particular area, and through a business case development, we identified that approximately $25 million was escaping our region on an annual basis by wages that were leaving to go either interstate or overseas, and predominantly overseas. And by 2030, the forecast was, or sorry, 2025, the forecast was that we'd be losing around about $80 million worth of escape revenue on an annual basis. Now, clearly that's not exactly happening now as we've moved into the COVID sphere, but what has happened as a result of COVID is an increased importance for the industry to satisfy its workforce needs domestically and not rely on imported workforce. So as we work through, if you like, the years since 2016, what we've been able to do is identify, first of all, a funding stream through industry to support us. So that funding stream was effectively what's known as the Victorian Renewable Energy Auction Scheme, or VRAS. And through that VRAS scheme, the state government effectively auctioned off a significant amount of megawatts of energy generation to various industry partners effectively, and provided them with basically a guaranteed price for every megawatt of energy generated as a result of the auction. Through that program, we were effectively able to become an industry partner to the 4 listed, if you like, companies that are listed on the screen. As you can see, Vestas, Tilt, Global Power Generation, which is GPG, and Acciona. Cumulatively, those organisations contributed $1.8 million towards the APRATEC initiative back in effectively 2019. So we've moved 3 years, and in that 3 years, we've secured the funding and essentially secured, if you like, the life of the initiative. From 2019 through to currently, we've started to actually develop up, if you like, what the project looks like. And essentially, it's built on 3 elements. And in the screen in front of you, you can see on the right-hand side a 20-metre tower. Now, the design and the development of that 20-metre tower is pivotal to one of the 3 elements that we're trying to address for the sector, and that is safety training. Working at 100+ metres above the ground in windy environments is obviously a high-risk vocation. And in order to address that, the industry has globally recognised qualifications that are delivered throughout Australia by various RTOs, but they certainly don't have anything that replicates a real-world experience of working at heights. And so through the development of this 20-metre replication simulated tower, if you like, that you can see on your screen, we'll be able to provide globally based or globally recognised training for folks that are looking to enter the wind energy generation sector, either from a construction perspective or from a maintenance perspective. The industry's been crying out for a simulated training environment that replicates a real heights experience. At 20 metres, it is a real heights experience. We're all probably familiar with the fact that currently you can get a working at height certificate at a much lower height level than that, between 2 and 4 metres, which is not a real heights experience. This will absolutely be a real heights experience. The training tower that we build will be part of a high-risk compound. It's currently in construction at the moment. Footings have been laid and the steel components are being built. But we'll also provide confined spaces training, manual handling, first aid, dogging, and a range of other qualifications in the high-risk environment, including traffic controller, all aimed at providing skill sets in that that will support folks as they look to enter the sector, either from a construction perspective or from a maintenance perspective. The second and the most, and I think one of the flagship programs we'll offer is in the center of the screen, you can see a mock-up of an image of some folks in protective equipment. those folks are in fact actually students that we see will start doing an apprenticeship program in blade repair. So if you think about the components that make up a wind turbine, you've got the tower, obviously, you've got the nacelle, which is the component that sits at the very top of the tower, and then you've got the revolving blades that we're all familiar with that go around and around, generating, if you like, the power that gets transferred into the generation equipment that's inside the nacelle. The repair and maintenance of those blades is carried out by blade repair technicians. There's a shortage of blade repair technicians throughout the globe, and companies throughout the globe shift their workforces from the Northern Hemisphere to the Southern Hemisphere to maintain the blades on wind turbines globally. We will offer a world's first apprenticeship in blade repair technicians for blade repair technicians, which will be based essentially off of the Certificate 3 of Engineering Composites, contextualized to obviously meet the needs of a blade repair technician. That'll be a 3-year program, obviously, and we intend to start that program in 2022. And the third element of maintaining, if you like, the operation of wind turbine is a turbine technician. And that's the image that you can see of a technician sitting on the top of a nacelle. It's probably 110 meters on top of from the earth. They're looking out across the western plains of Victoria. So a turbine technician typically enters the industry from either being an electrician, a mechanical fitter, or an auto technician. So it's a post-trade, if you like, occupation. And classically what happens is the organisation, so Vestas or Acciona, Siemens, Suzlon, etc., Nordex, who are the OEMs for the turbines, will classically hire folks in the regions that they build the turbines or install the turbines in to satisfy the maintenance needs. So they essentially raid the local workforce, take away the local electricians, take away the local mechanics, etc. So it's a post-trade qualification, if you like. In order to satisfy the need for wind turbine technicians across the nation, we will be delivering under license what's known as the German equivalent for turbine technicians that's globally recognised. It's a 6-month post-trade program that will effectively start in 2023 and will provide effectively a pathway to employment for folks from either one of those 3 vocations, auto, mechanical fitter or electrician, directly into the industry for employment. It'll include a 1-month internship and it'll provide, as I say, a direct pathway to employment. Now, none of this would have been possible, as I say, without the support of our industry partners. Our industry partners, not only the ones that are listed, but also the subcontractors that work in the industry, as well as peak industry bodies, etc., have supported us in the development of the skills sets that we're going to deliver, helped support us in the delivery of the understanding of the market demand, etc., and have committed to training their folks with us as well. So we're very, very proud of our APRATEC initiative. We intend to start delivery from the training tower that you can see on the right side of your screen from the end of 2021, and the apprenticeship will start in 2022, and then the turbine technician course will start in 2023. And as we say, have always been saying, this initiative will be a major asset for the nation and provide the workforce of the future, and certainly provide an opportunity for folks that are in the fossil fuel industry to transition into the renewable energy sector as well. So that's pretty much me. Jenny?
Bill, thank you. What an interesting presentation about a new demand, really. I'll ask a question, and there might be others that come. How big's the workforce, Bill? Is it? I mean, locally it can't be enormous, but I assume you're hoping.
No. So that's one of the problems, if you like, in terms of the renewable energy sector, is that when you look across solar or you look across wind energy, you don't see the number of jobs that exist in the fossil fuel industry, and as a consequence, we will, to give you some idea, if you like, by us providing around about 24 turbine technicians trained annually, that will be sufficient to supply the nation.
Okay, so you will be drawing in, and that 6 months under license part, that's something you've developed directly with industry, and will that be a nationally available qualification? What's that going to look like?
It'll be delivered under license exclusive to us.
Okay, all right. Are there any questions anybody else might have? I think a really interesting presentation. Thank you, Bill. John, thank you.
Hi, Jenny. Yes, and thanks, Bill. Probably an extension. You almost asked the question I was going to ask, Jenny, but just an extension of that, Bill, I suppose, is the Victorian government funding that post-trade qualification? I assume they are, by the way, for the blade technician one.
No. So we've received absolutely no funding whatsoever to support us in the development of this initiative, other than a very small $50,000 grant to establish a business case in the very early days back in 2018. But other than the state government funding that will come with the delivery of the apprenticeship, there is no funding that we've managed to receive at all for the post-trade program. What I must say, though, is we'll be making some announcements in the near future, which will see significant amount of dollars that will be allocated to scholarships that will support folks that are looking to take up the post-trade program. We see, and again, that scholarship funding will be coming direct from industry. So industry is seeing that they have to directly invest with a partner like ourselves to satisfy their workforce needs across the nation.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, that's a great initiative. All credit to you. Well done.
Thank you.
Any other question? Thank you very much, John. Thanks for that. Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, Bill, just had a question in relation to, I'll get my camera to work, in relation to just recognition of existing skills, given the comments you've made about transferring electricians, etc., across and attracting fossil fuel workers into this new space of green energy. You got any comments on that, please?
Yeah. So essentially, anybody that comes into doing the Turbine Technician program will obviously be bringing the skills either from an electrical background or from a mechanical fitter background or from an auto background. Those skills are obviously a prerequisite, if you like, to undertake the course. And then essentially the training that we'll do through the course that we'll deliver will build on that knowledge and enable them to become a turbine technician. So it's not as though their skills will be diminished or not recognised. They're absolutely a prerequisite to enter the course.
Great, thank you for that.
The B's, and I just go on to say that the BZEE course that we will be delivering, which is a German course, is globally recognised as a pathway to employment for turbine technicians.
Yes, and I must say that the exciting thing in some ways about this is that you're skilling up local people in a way for an opportunity globally. I think it's a very exciting opportunity you're providing to regional students and regional young people. It's fantastic.
Yeah, if it wasn't for COVID, in all of our modelling and in all of the work that we've done prior to this point, we recognise that essentially what we would be training is folks that would pretty much have a ticket to ride anywhere in the globe, and they would you know, with the qualifications that we'll give them, they will have the opportunity to work on wind farms anywhere in the world.
That's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. What a really interesting presentation. And I guess if they can't go overseas, in some ways that's good for Australia, but it also means that there's a huge potential growth there for what you're doing in terms of student demand. Thank you for your presentation. I'm now going to turn to Tracy Singh. Tracy is from Tafe, Queensland, and Tracy's going to give us a perspective on what's on everybody's lips, really, which is micro-credentials, but I'm not sure that anybody has the same definition for any of that. So thank you, Tracy, and over to you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Appreciate the invite as well. I'm assuming that everybody can see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
No worries, that's great. Thanks very much. Look, thanks very much for the invite. And before I get started, I would just like to join everybody else on behalf of Tafe Queensland, acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we collectively meet and honour their elders past, present and future. And I think that you're really right, Jenny. I mean, micro-credentials is a bit the flavour of the month at the moment, and certainly has been for the last little while as well. So Tafe Queensland's journey with micro-credentials probably started in about 2018, where we commenced a project with the Foundation for Young Australians to have a look at how micro-credentials could actually be used to fill, you know, identified gaps, I guess, in training packages to respond to really the new and emerging needs of industry. So obviously industry is being quite disrupted at the moment through technology, through different systems, through processes, through certainly ways of working. You know, there's a lot of disruptive influences on industry at the moment. So it was really having a look at that and doing it from an industry perspective. So we started off doing that through the community services sector. We chose the community services sector because the Foundation for Young Australians actually focus on, you know, the 19 to 25 year age group for this particular project. And that's obviously a sector that is undergoing a lot of change as well, but also has quite high employment needs that they're not filling. We thought it would be a good opportunity to investigate it in that context. So really the value of micro-credentials is to keep pace with the emerging skills, to have a look at key skills such as digital, enterprise and technical skills, and also the agility and flexibility. Like they're a really good way of being able to respond to industry, not only now, but continuing to contextualise them either across different industry sectors or in the future with when the needs change for that. So at Tafe Queensland, through the work that we did, we identified 5 different types of skills required to succeed in the new world of work. So when we're looking at those, the 3 in the middle are the ones that we're primarily focused on at the moment, but certainly foundational are things like PD, you know, really short, sharp micro-credentials. A lot of the ways that we actually deliver these foundational micro-credentials are self-paced online micro-credentials with digital badge or automated certificates as an outcome. So the technical ones are more specific skills and they're often related directly to an industry sector. The enterprise ones are the ones that we've talked about a lot previously as well. It's transferable skills, you know, the soft skills type of approach. Attributes are a little bit more complex, to be honest, because often they're personal characteristics like, you know, it might be resilience or empathy, that type of thing. And they can be more difficult to actually both define, but also more difficult to train. So they can be, you know, a little bit more challenging. And then we've got the career management micro-credentials. So actually helping people to keep and maintain jobs. The co-design process that we actually developed through the work that we did with FYA, and certainly that we've continued to work through from that point on, really starts off with exploration. So what we did in that particular project is we did a lot of big data analysis. We were fortunate to be able to have Alpha Beta on board, who actually looked at the job ads across Queensland and did a bit of a comparison between the job ads and what was actually out there. So what industry was asking when they're actually recruiting for these roles, and the training packages to see whether there were, you know, whether there was an alignment or whether there's some key areas that we could prioritise based on that. So that was really fascinating research, and that the research has actually been put into a report which will be released by the department. We're still waiting for a release date, but I believe in the next couple of months. So I think that'll be interesting. Then we do sense making. Now we do this across all of the industry developed micro-credentials, where we actually use either existing relationships or networks, or we develop bespoke sort of consultation groups. So whether they're advisory committees or whether they're, you know, built on networks or that we already have. But it's really important to make sure that those advisory committees are involved in that process right from the very commencement of the development of micro-credentials. Because what we're starting with is sort of the course concept process, and you want to make sure that the areas that you've actually prioritised are the areas that really industry is interested in and is going to give both industry and students the best outcome. So the idea generation is, you know, going more into that course concept, course structure sort of area prior to development of the micro-credential, and just reviewing, reflecting, really starting to have a look and test that with the industry stakeholders. As well as in that session for that particular project, we also did take it to students as well and did some focus groups there as well. So, you know, we were fortunate in that project to have a lot of time and resourcing to be able to actually do that level of engagement and interaction across the different stakeholder groups. But it really, you know, it just showed that it was very important. So the prototyping is actually developing a model, so developing the micro-credential, putting it through production, doing all those sort of processes. Again, we like to, when we're developing our micro-credentials, have a really flexible approach. So often they're online, sometimes they're self-paced, but even if they are online and self-paced, given what we've been, you know, given the environment that we've been in over the last couple of years, we also like to make sure that they're very flexible and agile so that we can sort of pivot those to a workshop-based approach or to face-to-face training, you know, Zoom training, that type of thing as well. Because the whole purpose of micro-credentials is to have that flexibility and agility. So you want to make sure that we're actually capturing that in the design process. And then with that particular project, and pretty much all of the projects that we've done with industry, from that point, we do a pilot of the micro-credentials just to test, to actually deliver that with students, which is a great opportunity to be able to find additional information and you know, just get a little bit more detail on what's working, what's not working. It's not necessarily the product, it also can be the, you know, the delivery methods, different student cohorts, that type of thing. So that's a really important process for us as well. Out of that, we developed a micro-credential structure. Now, I would say that I think, like a lot of the micro-credential structures out there at the moment, this is probably still a bit of a work in progress and continuing to be refined. But we really did want to create something across Tafe Queensland so that we could categorise micro-credentials and start to get a consistent language and understanding and messaging around micro-credentials and how they work, how they can be used, and the, you know, the variety of micro-credentials that are potentially available. I would say that in our case, we have probably stayed mainly in the essential, foundation and skilled areas. So between sort of, you know, 1 to 2.5 hours of learning up to 25 hours of learning. So the Foundation for Young Australians ones were the 25 hours of learning. And that was a few different things. It started off with an online course. We had facilitated webinars, and we actually did have projects and practical activities as part of that 25 hours as well. As you can see, most of them are not accredited. When we get up to the higher levels, we start to map those through to the accredited courses to be able to facilitate pathways through to higher levels of learning, whether that's skill sets or qualifications. And so some features of TAFE Queensland's micro-credentials is that they are non-accredited. So, you know, there's quite a few discussions going on around there about, you know, the benefits of accrediting or non-accrediting. You know, I certainly think that there's a benefit to them being verifiable, you know, industry supported, industry endorsed, all those type of things. But, you know, accredited and non-accredited is still probably a discussion. I think that there is some benefits to them being non-accredited in that they have a lot of flexibility. We're also doing a lot of digital badging. So I think digital badging, I mean, for us at least, is, you know, a bit in its inception, but I think that it's going to be a really, really valuable awarding sort of way to award qualifications in the future, particularly when you go to LinkedIn and that type of thing. And now you can actually just literally, you know, click a button and pretty much apply for a job in some LinkedIn instances and, you know, start to populate your portfolio of achievements. So in that sort of environment, I think that it's going to be, you know, enormously beneficial to students. We mainly have stayed within the technical enterprise skills and the attributes. So we've done some on resilience and leadership, which is some of the ones that I put into the attribute bucket. And we have done a range of delivery modes, as I mentioned as well. So with the digital badging, you know, we're really looking at doing a whole lot of different approaches to that. But, you know, we do have a consistent categorization, so students know there. You can have them either ongoing, so there's no end date, or you can have them as an end date. Yeah, that's certainly something that we're looking to continue to do in the future as well, and probably build on, and also educate students about what they can do with those digital badges. One of the things that we found when we first issued them was, you know, everybody really loved them and they were very popular, but they weren't entirely sure how they could use them or how they could integrate them with the, you know, with new employment opportunities, that type of thing. So that's something that we've certainly done from that point on. So the three case studies that we've got with the co-creation of micro-credentials with industry is really the Queensland Future Skills Project, and we'll talk a bit more about that case study from the next slide. And I'm going to hand over to Robert Petherbridge, who's Executive Director for Tafe Queensland, to give you a bit of an overview on that. The Foundation for Young Australians, so the community services area, where we did a person-centred suite with leadership, mentoring, resilience, digital skills, and information and research. The Workability Community Services Industry Alliance, where we're actually now doing an NDIS Workforce Fundamentals program, which we're about to pilot next week, and that's a very popular one as well. And we also do have a range of other ones, particularly in digital literacy, data, that type of thing. So I think, you know, we're up to around 30 micro-credentials at the moment that we're able to deliver, but it's certainly something that we're finding is enormously popular. I think the digital ones that we did originally have got around 17,000 enrolments in them so far. So they're certainly, I think, the way of the future. I think they're here to stay, you know, and I think that it's something that we're certainly going to remain focused on. So I'll hand over to Robert now to give you a bit of an overview of the Queensland Future Skills Partnership and how we actually use micro-credentials and engage with industry in that forum. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Tracy, and just checking that the audio is coming through all right. I'll assume that it is unless someone tells me otherwise. Yeah, thank you. Tracy asked if I could just give a very quick overview of the Queensland Future Skills Partnership, which is a project that we've been working on for the last 18 months to 2 years. It's led by BHP Mitsubishi Alliance, and I should say led and funded by BHP Mitsubishi Alliance with an investment of just over $2 million to date. Along with two educational partners being CQ University Australia and Tafe Queensland. The purpose of the partnership initially was to develop skills and training programs to support the implementation of autonomous technologies, and in particularly driverless trucks into BMA's 7 coal mines in Queensland. And we've been working through that process with a number of different stakeholders. The steering committee for the project are showing up, or the members, I should say, for the steering committee of the project are showing up on the screen. Probably one of the key things when we looked at when we applied to micro-credentials and some of the topics that we're talking about today, is that we started with a very blank sheet of paper in terms of scope of work. BMA and BHP were very keen to say that we need to have programs that are specific and relevant to the jobs of the future and to changing occupations, and we're quite open in terms of what that looked like at the end of the day. Where we've ended up in the project is that we've built and are delivering now 10 separate micro-credentials. We can put those up on the screen for you in a second. But in addition to those micro-credentials, we have 12 skill sets and a new accredited course, which is a certificate to autonomous technologies. The different products that have been developed through the partnership relate to different areas of the workforce. So the micro-credentials are specifically about providing some entry-level information. So back to Tracy's framework before, where we were looking at foundation and skills and essentials, all of the micro-credentials sit into that space. So they're up to 25 hours worth of learning. And the delivery of the micro-credentials are, we have it all loaded onto an LMS, so they can be delivered online. But most of the delivery to date's been in either a blended delivery mode or in a face-to-face workshop mode, and that's been probably the most successful across both existing workforce and also school students as well. The purpose of the micro-credentials in this project was simply to provide information and an overview of some of those areas. So introductory information on positioning basics, on GPS, on cybersecurity, of safety, about working in autonomous environments, etc. And the feedback so far on the pilot programs and delivering them has been excellent. If we step into the skill sets that were developed sit across a range of AQF, all the way from Cert 2 AQF units into Cert 4, and those skill sets are focused on what are the needs for the skills now for the workforce to take on changing roles and changing occupations as a result of implementation of new technologies. And then the Certificate 2 provides an entry-level pathway for school students and other semi or non-skilled people into autonomous jobs and environments within the MET sector. And then what we've agreed with BMA very recently is an extension to that project, and we are looking into then what are the higher level skills, what are the higher level skill sets, and the higher level micro credentials that are going to be needed for workforce of the future in roles including engineering, geology, those sorts of things. And then what are the career pathways that we can actually start to build? We've got the career pathways going in, but what are the career pathways both through and then onto afterwards for that? So probably just a couple of things to call out. And I don't know if you want to go to the final slide there, Tracy. The partnership in terms of working together. Initially, when we came to this, both Seeker University Australia being a dual sector organisation in Queensland and Tafe Queensland, we were both asked to bid separately for this. Very early in the piece, acknowledging Peter Helbath, who's on the line today, Peter and I sat down and said, we actually think we can do a much better job of this working together, covering the full spectrum of entry-level vet all the way through to higher level skills in the higher education sector. And the partnership has worked really, really well to date with both those partners involved. We've done essentially the current technical occupations and the trade areas, if you like, of the occupational change elements to date in phase 1, and phase 2 that's just recently been approved by BMA now steps us into those higher level skills, the top end of vocational training, if you like, in the entry level of higher education. And Peter's team are looking at what are the higher education skill sets that and micro credentials that we might need to start building. And the success of the project has been that, as I said at the start, it's been fully funded in the first instance by industry through BMA. But we've seen, as we've gotten into piloting and the need for government to start to invest in rolling it out, the Department of Employment, Small Business and Training in Queensland has provided about $500,000 in terms of piloting the various programs in schools. And then our Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport has also provided some additional funding for us to look at small to medium employers in terms of rolling out some of the skill sets as well to provide greater accessibility to those. And probably very key to the overall success of the project and needing to contribute to regional skills workforce development. We're currently negotiating with both the Commonwealth and the state government to use exactly the same methodology and approach that we've taken to identify what the skills programs to support jobs of the future are in the MET sector and transfer that into the agriculture and aquacultural sector in the central Queensland area. And that's certainly a recognition of the good work that's been done. In terms of the picture up on the screen there, the initiative has been awarded the Resource Training Council's Outstanding Training Initiative award for this year, which we're very proud of. And we're also on the top 3 shortlist for the Premier's Industry Collaboration Award, identifying obviously that fantastic environment where you've got industry working together with with Queensland's 2 largest public providers. So I'm happy to take any questions, but it's a really good example, I think, following on from Tracy's presentation about how we are starting to use, in particular, micro-credentials, but these programs in a commercial setting, and that they're really being valued by industry and companies, and industry and companies are certainly happy to to be paying for them. So thank you, Tracy and Jenny. Happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. Look, thank you, Tracy and Robert. Great presentation, and what a fabulous collaboration you've got going. Have we got any questions from anyone? There's nothing in the chat. And I didn't see any hands up unless... So one from me, I thought it was really interesting in Tracy's bit, you largely talked about they are non-accredited, but when you got onto your industry example, some of that is accredited. Is that correct? Some of the higher level is accredited training. Is that right, Robert?
That's correct, Jenny. So the 3 separate products, if you like, being in the first instance the 10 micro-credentials. Those 10 micro-credentials are non-accredited training, and they're specifically about providing introductory or foundational level information to both existing workforce, but also to people who are looking at getting into the sector, and providing information about what, the sorts of things they're doing, about how the cyber physical systems work in a mining sector, how cyber security works, network positioning basics, etc. Then we step into the skill sets. And the skill sets, the group of 12 skill sets, mainly built on existing units, but from a number of different packages. Those skill sets are accredited, but they're specifically about what are the additional skills that need to be given to either existing workers in occupations that are changing or occupations that are being created. So if we take a very simple example of truck drivers coming out of trucks, they have the understanding and the knowledge of how to actually drive and move those vehicles, how they work. They don't understand, though, the new systems that sit over there to allow for the autonomous operations of them. So by giving them what we call a first responder skill set, they can transition into a first responders role, which is about going out and addressing any issues with the trucks if they stop. If they can't get it fixed there on site, then they've got the skills and the licenses to move those trucks off the path to allow the others to come through. So it's about accredited training to support new occupations and changing occupations. And then thirdly, the certificate 2 is an entry-level pathway. That's an accredited course. So yes, accredited.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very detailed answer. Thank you, Robert. That was great. We've got 2 questions now that have emerged. We'll go first to Mary and then to Gavin. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks for the presentation. Really interesting. My question is in relation to the take-up of micro-credentials. We've had here in Victoria with the job trainer and short courses and skill sets, not a big take-up. And from what I hear from your presentation, is that the take-up's been great in industry. Is that also good in just your normal sort of delivery, as in to sort of a range of students who are coming in to TAFE Queensland?
So just generally, Mary, look, I think that it's really important. There is actually a bit of a disparity in the take-up of micro-credentials between those that we actually develop commercially with industry, or we do develop with industry, and those that we develop internally, based on, our understanding of needs and that type of thing. So we find that when we develop with industry, we get an enormous time, a lot more take up than we do when we develop them without industry, particularly when we're looking at networks, as with the Queensland Future Skills Project, but also with the FYA, with the CSIA, the NDIS ones. Like these are micro-credentials that industry are actually asking for, are supporting, are involved in the development for, and are very engaged in the delivery of as well. So that just makes an enormous difference. I honestly think that's the key to micro-credentials.
Over to you, Gavin. Thank you very much, Tracy and Mary. Over to you, Gavin.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy, and thanks, Robin. That was fantastic. I had a question about the micro-credentials. And Robin, the way you say that, in part, they're really good to use as pathways in and to give a flavour of what's coming. And I was curious to know if you've thought about how do we think about making those part of a future, so if someone does a micro-credential, how do they become credentialed so that it does form part of, 90% of a Cert 2 one day or something like that? It's a question, we're asking ourselves at the Mining Skills Organisation, and with our industry partner, Minerals Council of Australia, having developed some micro-credentials for higher education. The micro-credentials there, they're called a professional certificate for the foundations of modern mining, but that's for the professionals, and it may lead to something down the track. But I'm just curious to know from you, how do you see that change? Because that's a change I'd like to see, is like micro-credentials aren't a waste, they lead to something down the track. Thank you.
Absolutely, and the way that we've built the product suite, if you like, Gavin, for the Future Skills Partnership is that it's not linear, but certainly the content in the skill sets and the Cert 2 builds on some of the concepts that sort of come through from the micro-credentials. Tracy spoke a bit earlier about the digital badging, and so we've used digital badging within the Future Skills Partnership. We came up with a partnership-specific logo and badging, etc., as a way to actually start to have that discussion. Now, we've had a look, and I think certainly over in the West, there's organisations like MyPass and those type of applications that certainly have a really good approach to digital passports. And I think that the more we can actually build a digital passport or a framework for qualifications all the way from micro-credentials into short courses and skill sets into full qualifications, the more that we can actually build that as a concept, the easier it will be. So absolutely, we're very keen to see how it works. And in a different industry, part of the response that we've just put together for the Home Care Workforce Support Program grant certainly looks at how we can ensure that all the different bits of learning that a personal care worker might do is captured in some way and actually builds towards a stackable qualification. So in short, I think that we need to get some good examples and some pilots up using, either existing things that are there or working with organisations. But if you can actually build it in a stackable way and have and actually show how that works into supporting occupations and skills for occupations, that's probably the best way to do it, I think.
Terrific. Thank you, Robin. Robin, and we'll have a chat down the track as well. Sounds good.
Thank you very much. There's also been a comment popped in the chat from Peter about what Peter Hilberth, who Robert referred to in the presentation, from Central Queensland University, who also made a comment there that unless it's mandated, most people are choosing not to do the assessment. I think there's still a lot of conversations to be had about micro-credentials, and thank you both for stimulating a lot of our thinking there. I certainly think at industry's level, they're trying to tease through, as Gavin has so rightly in his question highlighted, how do you play in that space? And I certainly, in your presentation, gave some really practical examples. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Tracy, and Peter, who didn't speak but is now on the screen, who is also part of this collaboration.
Thanks, Jenny.
We've reached 1:04. We've heard from four different presentations about the fantastic industry collaborations that are occurring across the country between Tafe and local industry, and broader in terms of new directions, new emerging industries, new types of partnerships. Thank you to all of those presenters. If you have questions for anyone, please pop them in the chat while we're having a break. We're now going to have a break. We will return promptly at 1:30. That gives you 25 minutes to get some lunch, get some fresh air, but we will return promptly at 1:30 to hear from our 5 industry speakers. Thank you all. We will see you soon.